Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will read a story about a man who has a crazy sister-in-law that wanted to ruin his marriage, try to steal form them, and even taking their child's name. This is a two-part story, so be sure to like and subscribe for part 2. Let's get started. Why my wife hates her family. The reason my wife hates her family is that they are mostly just plain nasty. My wife has a younger half-sister from her mother's second marriage. Now, from what I'm told, the half-sister's father was very emotionally and physically abusive to my wife and didn't stick around more than 10 years before flying the coop for reasons I don't know. Because my wife has a different father, she also had different grandparents. My wife's father is a very nice man and we get along quite well. He divorced my wife's mother early on in their marriage because she's completely toxic. Because of having different parents, there's a 7-year age gap between my wife and her half-sister. Said half-sister ended up being pretty much the baby of the family, and they paid little attention to my wife once sister-in-law was born. So my wife left to live with her father full-time at some point in her teens, and her mother made a huge stink about it because without her, she no longer got child support money. That woman has also been nothing but crass to me since I met her. I think mainly because I'm not rich, since she bluntly said my wife could do better. I make a decent yearly salary, so I cover my expenses just fine, have my own house, and now a wonderful family. Sister-in-law was brought up pretty much in all the stereotypical ways you can imagine. Never held accountable, never made to pay her own way on anything. Got into all kinds of trouble because she was just spoiled rotten. You can think of her as almost having been an embodiment of Baruch assault, minus the rich enabling dad. When she first met me, there was quite an awkward and nasty period before she met her baby daddy. Around the time my wife's sister turned 18, she came to visit us more often and also started asking to spend the night on weekends. I left that decision up to my wife, and she allowed it because she hoped it'd help her and her sister become closer as siblings. But over time, I noticed sister-in-law flirting with me more, and she was dressing in skimpier clothes and complimenting me a lot. She loved to pinch my arms and said I was like a candle with muscles. Then one day she actually tried to put her hand on my crotch. That was the last straw, and I told her to leave. She said I didn't know what I was missing. Before my wife laid into her, they had a huge fight. Sister-in-law said my wife didn't deserve a man like me before storming out. I guess sister-in-law found me attractive and thought she could take me away from my wife, or perhaps she just wanted to bait me. I don't know, but I do know that I'd never let something like that happen. I love my wife dearly. She's a positively radiant woman who knows how to make me smile every day. I could never be unfaithful to her. Anyway, sister-in-law didn't give up. Sister-in-law heavily flirted with me on multiple occasions whenever we visited mother-in-law over the next couple of years. She even started getting her cousin involved, and together they actually ganged up on me at a family Halloween party once. They were both dressed in skimpy animal cosplay outfits and actually proposed we go upstairs and have a threesome together. I not only declined, but said they both needed to find some nice single guys their own age. Then I immediately told my wife what happened. She laid into them in front of everyone at the event, but mother-in-law sided with her golden child and got several other relatives to have her back by claiming I was lying to make trouble. So we just left to avoid more drama. Around the time sister-in-law's 21st birthday came and went, mother-in-law called us furious that we missed the birthday and didn't even send a gift. Apparently, sister-in-law was crying over it. I said I was not comfortable around sister-in-law because she attempted to seduce me multiple times, and my wife said that it was not my choice but hers whether or not to send a gift, and she didn't want to because of what sister-in-law did. Mother-in-law never even so much as scolded her for it. Mother-in-law called it young hormones and said families shouldn't be so cruel to each other. That turned into another big fight between mother-in-law and my wife, and we went low contact with the bulk of her family for a while. Then 2 years ago, my wife's grandmother died. She left most of what she had to her son, my father-in-law, but among the things my wife got was all her jewelry. It was all vintage antique jewelry that had been passed down to only women in the family for years. We had the collection appraised, and it was valued as a whole at several $100,000 because the jewelry was not only vintage, but some of it was around 200 years old. We decided it was best to keep the jewelry locked away in the grandmother's jewelry box, which in itself is also a valuable handmade antique. Of course, all was not well with mother-in-law and sister-in-law. They both had shown up at the reading of my wife's grandmother's will, and mother-in-law was appalled. He got nothing, even more so after finding out my wife got the jewelry. My wife's grandmother had no relationship with sister-in-law at all and barely one with mother-in-law, so sister-in-law wasn't even mentioned in the will. Mother-in-law threatened to take us to court and contest the will, but never did. Instead, she tried being nicer to us, and my wife decided to give them one last chance and allowed them into our home again. But as soon as our backs were turned, they tried to make off with the jewelry and all its contents. I'd gone out to pick up some pre-ordered food for dinner, and my wife was distracted by mother-in-law. Sister-in-law had pretended to use the bathroom and raided my wife's vanity. But I caught sister-in-law outside by sheer chance when I pulled in the driveway because I wasn't gone as long as they'd hoped. As soon as my headlights flashed her, she dropped the box on the ground before jumping in mother-in-law's car and locking herself in it. My wife and mother-in-law came running out when they heard me cursing up a storm. My wife saw the smashed jewelry box and freaked out. Mother-in-law realized she and sister-in-law were caught and had a huge fit over how she believed my wife didn't deserve the jewelry. I got between them, and mother-in-law hit me a few times and even drew some blood with her sharp nails, but she drove off before we could even get another word in. Once my wife said she was calling the police, we left the evidence untouched on the ground and called the police. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were arrested, but basically got a slap on the wrist with only community service and a fine. The jewelry box was badly damaged. It had a long crack that started up on one corner and went all the way to the top, and one of the brass hinges broke. I took it to someone who restored old stuff, and it cost hundreds of dollars to restore it. I went to see mother-in-law and said she and sister-in-law were paying for the repairs to the box, or we'd be taking them both to court over it. Mother-in-law told me that wasn't happening until I brought up the fact that we still have documented police evidence sister-in-law tried to steal the box, and I could also sue mother-in-law for the assault she did to me. She wrote me out a check to cover the damages right away and told me to leave. I said that the check better not bounce or have a stop payment put on it, or I'd have zero problems taking her and sister-in-law to court. The check thankfully cleared without issue. We got the jewelry box back looking even better than it did before, but we decided the jewelry wasn't safe in our home anymore and had it put in a secure safety deposit box where it has remained to this day. This incident was also what made us decide our home needed cameras, and we've since installed some. And that's the end of part 1 of this story. What do you guys think? What would you do if you were in the poster's shoes? Let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you guys on the next video.